Thank you.
And are you feeling a bit apprehensive about being here? And I did reach out to Karen for the listeners and asked if she would come on and share her story, as little or as much as she would feel comfortable doing so, because she's in my group coaching and you've had massive transformations, and I just want you to share.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start off with a few. I'm going to pick 5 fun questions at the top of my head to get us like feeling a bit more relaxed and so they can get to know you. So the first question is, I don't know why I'm looking around my garden to find the question. What's your favourite food?
I like macaroni, cheese, and chips.
Yum.
Yeah.
Are you a beach person, a forest person, or something else?
I like both, but beach. I love the sea. I want to live by the sea. I'm not quite near enough at the moment.
Whereabouts are you?
So I'm in Edinburgh in Scotland, so it is on the coast, but I live sort of in the city, so I can't see the sea and I can't walk to the sea from where I am, and I would like to be able to do that.
Nice. And this isn't a quick question because it's partly from what you've shared. I went to Edinburgh once and that was the first place I tried deep fried Mars bar.
Oh, no way! I've never even tried that.
Oh, have you not? I actually quite liked it. It was nice.
No, I'm not very keen on deep fried anything really.
Well, maybe give
So
it a go if your taste buds fancy it when you walk past the chippy next. Because it's an
yeah,
Edinburgh thing, I think. That's what I was told
it's
anyway.
well a Scottish thing. Yeah, I'm not quite sure where who. Oh, it might have been Edinburgh that somebody first
I think it was. Yeah.
made it up. Yeah,
Yeah.
just decided let's deep fry this
Let's
because
just
it's
deep
deep
fry a
fried
Mars bar.
easily. Yeah, yeah, why not?
Third question. If you could go anywhere in the world for 1 month and you could never go back there again, where would you go?
Oh gosh. Oh, probably New Zealand.
Oh, yeah.
It's far away, and yeah, that would definitely make the flight worth it
Yeah, long
if you were
way.
going for a month. And it's a really varied landscape as well. So
Yeah, apparently it's like similar to the UK in places, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, I've heard that.
Beautiful. I want to ask you an obvious question, but we can
Hmm.
see behind you. I was going to say you're a dog or a cat person.
Definitely cat person. I like dogs, but yeah, I have cats, and yeah, I'm just more. I think I kind of relate to them as well. I like the independence, and yeah,
Yeah.
just
So if a cat appears on the screen, it's all welcome. They can do their thing.
yeah. Hopefully they won't fight. They're both in the room at the moment, which normally when I'm speaking to somebody, they clear out. They're not here, so I don't know why they like your
Well, they
voice,
may
maybe.
want to be involved in the episode. They may be like
Yeah,
my energy. Who knows? I've got a fly that's a friend, and I'm not that keen on that. But whatever, you do you.
yeah.
And maybe that was that 3 or 4?
I think
4.
4.
The last question. Oh, describe yourself in 3 words.
Hmm. Physically or just me?
Just you.
Uh, kind, friendly, independent.
Love. Okay, thank you for sharing those quickfire questions, well, answers to the questions. And I would like to go to, because I'm learning about you as well. I don't know you like that well. So, what is your story? So, we don't have to time you, but within 5, 10 minutes, or as long or as little as you want to take within 10 minutes, when did you first start noticing like your relationship with food was off or your relationship with body? Like, how did it begin for you up to the point where maybe you've got help before or when you reached out to the group?
So I think it probably began in terms with my body as a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
um, feeling too big. I had a friend who was very focused on appearance, and she was quite slim, and she was always talking about being, oh, I'm so fat and everything. And I was thinking, gosh, if you're fat, then I must be huge, and all of that. So my body image, I think, as a teenager was never good, and my self-esteem wasn't very good. Um, and I just wasn't, sort of grew up in, my family were lovely, but just sort of emotionally not that available. So kept a lot to myself. Was very used to just kind of dealing with things on my own. So a lot of that kind of, I think, came before, what then
Mm-hmm.
came later. So it wasn't until I was at university when I was 19, and I just split up with a boyfriend. And I still had a friend at the time the same friend actually who I was sharing with, and she had bulimia and she was quite depressed. But I always used to feel like I had to eat to make her feel better, and kind of just everything was about making her feel better. And when I split up with a boyfriend and I was still living with her, I had just had this really strong sort of feeling of this is my body and I get to decide what I eat and what I do with it. And I just wanted to lose some weight. I didn't intend to lose lots of weight, but I did. I just kind of kept going. So until I was officially diagnosed with anorexia. And I didn't like the way my body looked then. I didn't feel like I was too fat or anything like that. I felt like I was too thin. I kind of wanted to put on weight, but I also couldn't. I just felt stuck where I was. I did get some help from a psychiatrist and a dietitian, but just found it really difficult to put the weight back on. And that was like maybe a couple of years. And then the binging just started sort of almost out of the blue. And so it was like my body kind of recovered without me. I kind of felt like
That's what happened. You know that my story is very similar
yeah.
to yours. The
It's
body
one
just
of the reasons I kind of was drawn to you, because you had been through different eating disorders as well, whereas some people kind of stay in the same sort of thing. Um, and yeah, I felt so out of control. And the first sort of binges were quite far apart initially, and like I would try and make myself sick, but I wasn't very good at doing it. And then I would like fast the next day to make up for it and that kind of thing. But then they just got closer and closer together to the point where I was like binging every day and several times a day, and had managed to make myself sick as well. So I was binging and vomiting several times a day. And that was probably quite intense for another sort of couple of years or something before it gradually I guess I did get more help. I still didn't find it all that helpful. But
What route did you go down when you got more help?
so again, I just went to the NHS, saw a psychiatrist, saw a dietitian at the time. So this was about 30 years ago now. So I don't think the eating disorder waiting lists were as long as they are now. And, so yeah, I was able to get some help from people then, but
I'm curious because I've heard a lot, and you've probably heard it in the group as well. I don't know what it was like then. I assume it was similar. Professionals who were supporting people that have been diagnosed or recognize themselves with binge eating disorder, there's actually a lot of, oh, here's a meal plan, so therefore you won't binge. As if
yes.
binging is like the bad thing, and that's actually the disorder and the problem. Did you experience that in treatment?
Yes, yeah, it was. Yeah, it was kind of like the binging was the issue. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they would give me a meal plan to help, and then there was something that sort of weirdly helped, even though I don't really know why it did now. But the psychiatrist I was seeing, I didn't like her, but she had this suggestion. She was like, if you could only binge like say 3 times a week, and then you had to give me a reason for why you binged 4 or 5 instead, then
Right.
like would that make a difference? And I actually managed to get myself down to binging 3 times a week because I didn't want to explain why I did it more. But I think it just was I sort of as well was figuring it out in my own head. Like I would binge sometimes out of routine, out of habit, sometimes out of hunger, sometimes because I was stressed. And I kind of like managed to get myself to start thinking, well, which of those can I start to target first? If it's just a habit, then I need to be able to get out of that. And
Yeah.
um, knowing what I do now, I just wish I'd met somebody like you then.
I went, yeah, I went through the exact same thing. And so, how long was you in that cycle until you found the group then?
Kind of, not as bad, but yes. So it was, yeah, I kind of went through phases of restriction and binging less.
Yeah.
Maybe purging never really went away. I was sort of the self-induced vomiting was kind of there. Um, Not always and all the time, but it just was a regular thing if I was uncomfortable or um, felt like I'd eaten too much for whatever reason. So I kind of went through years of sometimes it being better, sometimes it being worse. Um, with it sort of coming back, I used to kind of almost go by, well, if I actually fit the sort of diagnosis. But if I actually fit the diagnosis for bulimia, then I was doing badly. But if I didn't fit the diagnosis, even if I was still doing eating disorder behaviors, I kind of felt like I was all right. And again, years ago, at one point, I got diagnosed with, which they don't even have now, I don't think, the eating disorder not otherwise specified was
Oh
what
yeah,
I got given.
Fred or something like that. I think
There
it's
might be some, yeah, because I didn't fit, I wasn't binging enough to be bulimic, and I wasn't under
wow.
low enough weight enough to be anorexic. So it was just like, okay, it's not normal, but it's
Isn't that crazy? Like, how
something
did
else.
that make you feel a certain way that even within your illness, you didn't really fit into a thing, or didn't that bother you?
Didn't really bother me, to be honest. I was just, I think I just wanted some kind of help and acknowledgement that I was struggling. I
Yeah.
struggled with depression for a long time as well, which I think actually was partly the eating disorder made it worse.
Mm.
Um,
And then how did you find me? I actually can't remember, or I've never maybe asked you. How did you come across my work, and then what led you to sign up to the group?
it was a podcast,
Yeah.
and I think there was a podcast you did with, is it Sabrina
Oh, Sabrina
Magnan?
McNann. Yes, Sabrina. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you were both just talking. I think I don't know if you're doing Q&A or something, but you were doing it just really related, and I'd kind of I was just starting to explore things like intuitive eating and that kind of thing. I can't quite remember how I came across yours, but you also had a podcast about comparing yourself to your younger self.
Oh yeah. I
And
remember
that just
that
really
one.
resonated at the time too. And then I was just like, I just sort of started listening to more and more of your podcasts. And then I saw you had a free support group, so I joined that. And yeah, that was.
You got the vibe, you got my vibe, and then you were like, oh, maybe this person actually knows what she's talking about and can
Well,
help me.
yeah. And I think because you've been through anorexia and bulimia and kind of binging and all the rest of it and managed to come out the other end, that was just really inspiring.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, that really helped. It was like, oh well, there's somebody who's actually done it and recovered, and
Yeah.
yeah,
You know what's really shocking to me when you said that you started to learn about intuitive eating and that's kind of how you found me through that avenue. But why are professionals not talking about that when someone comes to them with binge eating disorder or bulimia or whatever it is? Like,
yeah,
why are they not talking about the connection to yourself and the stuff underneath? And binging isn't the problem. It's like the stuff that I talk about, which you know, which we're going to go into. Like,
yeah.
did anyone ever mention anything to you about listening to your body and tuning in and eating intuitively in that recovery?
No, not before. Not before. This was what actually was, I think, for a while, just made me like I felt really sad for my younger self, and I just felt so kind of,
Mm.
I don't know if I don't think angry is quite the right word, but it was just like, why did I not know this at the time? I just needed
Yeah,
to know that what my body was doing was actually just a response to the fact that I'd been starving it for so long.
yeah.
Like, why did none of the professionals tell me that at the time? And, like, why did they not say your body's just trying to make up for all this time? And
Yes. I have
yeah,
every right to be angry. And I still ask that question, Karen.
yeah,
Like not in a judgy way, but why don't professionals know this? Because it's very dangerous. Like I've had so many young girls actually come to me who have been in inpatient, then in outpatient, and they're on a meal plan. I'm not saying a meal plan's a devil because it can help a lot of people, but then the professionals are saying every time you eat a lot of sugar, write down why you're eating it and what emotions you're feeling. And I'm like, she's in fucking recovery from anorexia. Like of course she's gonna eat like 4 cheesecakes. Like leave her to do
yeah,
that without moralizing it because you're going to keep her in eating disorder forever
yes,
unless you give full permission, which is obviously what I'm all about, to then be free and then make a choice and you won't want to eat 4 cheesecakes in a row.
yeah.
So share with us like what was your journey like? So you found my work, you found the free support group, you came into the paid program. Was there anything that surprised you? Anything that stood out as you were going through the program that you want to share?
Um, I just found it. I think just the really reassuring thing for me, and the thing I needed to keep going back to,
Mm.
was that I wasn't giving my body enough food to
Yeah.
eat. Because I felt for a long time that I was giving it enough. I didn't understand that I was still restricting, and that's why the binges were happening. And
Mm.
so I think that was one thing that was very clear when I came into the program, that you need to eat enough.
What
um,
was you comparing it to? Did you know? So when you were like, oh, maybe I'm not eating enough, before you realized that, was you just kind of following what used to be a meal plan? Was you tuning in, or was you like copying something? Like where was you getting your intake from?
um, I'm not sure actually. It was just I always had a structure, so I
Yeah.
always kept to eating kind of pretty much the same things.
Yeah.
I avoided the stuff that was binge triggers, and
Mm.
I was always kind of wanting to. I was either trying not to put on weight or I was trying to lose weight. So I was always trying to eat a bit less and not eat
Uh,
things that were fattening in any way.
yeah.
Um,
A lot of mental and physical restriction that was going on. No wonder the binges were happening.
yes, yeah, yeah, and I that just was that was the big thing. And actually,
Mm.
once I'd realised that, and I just let myself eat what I wanted to eat, the binges stopped really quickly,
Interesting.
really
Well,
quickly.
how did you go from realizing, okay, wow, I know that I'm not actually eating enough or what I want. Obviously, you had fear there in order to allow yourself to eat what you wanted. For the listeners, how did you face the fear to eat what you want when you want, knowing perhaps that you would gain weight? Like, what was going on in your head to help you just face it and just do it?
Um, so I guess like my motivations. Well, yeah, I wanted to recover because getting older, feeling like um I don't know, just wanting to be as healthy as I could be getting older. So this is nearly 30 years into having an eating disorder.
Yeah.
Um I'd already put on some weight, even though I was trying to restrict, and
Mm.
I'd gone over a weight that I had in my head that I couldn't go over.
Right.
And I tried to lose weight again, and I'd had kind of panicked about it, and oh my God, I'm over this weight, and what do I do now? And then I think that was where I was just like, you know what? I've done this for 30 years. Now it's time to try something different. And even if I gain weight, I want to be free of this. I'd like to
Mm.
be healthy going into. So my dad was unwell at the time as well, and with heart problems and things. And I was just sort of feeling, and I'm coming up to perimenopause and such like, and just sort
Mm.
of thinking, do I really want to be going into the rest of my life binging and purging and
Mm.
restricting? And no, I don't. And it's not the way to be healthy. And I
Mm.
just, yeah, I guess just somehow the balance had tipped for me.
You just had enough, and you also
Yeah,
knew that nothing would change. 'Cause obviously, that I talk about this a lot. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And I think I also have on my website somewhere. Do you want to be like 60 weighing peanut butter and like counting
yeah.
almonds? No.
No, no,
Yeah.
no. And this is it. I was just like, no, I'm not doing myself any favors. And I've spent so much, all my adult life really,
Mm.
with an eating disorder. Like, I'm going to try something different. So when it actually came to standing there, like just wanting to eat whatever I wanted, it was just, this is what I'm doing to stop me from binging and to
Yeah.
have a healthier life. I think,
Yeah.
I don't know, I must just have, I just kind of
There's
focus on
just
that.
that, it's hard to describe, isn't it? Because when you
Mm,
just do the thing, even though it's fearful, there's just, for me anyway, it's just like an inner part of me that wants what's on the other
yes.
side of the fear and the discomfort and the fear of weight gain, especially. You wanted that more than you wanted the same familiarity with what you've been doing for the last
Yeah.
30
And it
years.
wasn't working anyway. So,
Yeah, that's the
yeah, what was
helpful
the point
part.
in just keeping going? It's just like, just doing the same things over and over, hoping that maybe I'll have a different outcome. But it's
Yeah,
not. And I
yeah,
think I was even like once, one of the other things that really made sense to me was the genetic
yeah.
theory of
The
kind of
migration
anorexia.
response of the eating
Yeah.
disorder. Yeah.
And how that, because that really made sense to like when that first started for me, like how kind of easy it was and
Mm.
how that just kept going until my body decided it had
Yeah.
enough. But then I even at the start of recovery, I still had thoughts where I was like, oh, maybe if I just ate little enough, then that would set that off again, and I could
Oh,
just lose lots of weight again, and then that would be. Yeah, I had that up until, but I was like, Karen, you've tried this, you've tried this so many times, and even if you didn't know this theory before, you've tried to restrict, and it never ends well. So
no, it never leads to a happy life and it actually doesn't work anymore. So that's a blessing in disguise.
yeah.
And I would argue as well that, well, not argue, but I would know that when you started to eat what you wanted, whenever you wanted, there was a part of you that was like, oh, thank God, I want this so much. It wasn't like you only just wanted the freedom, it
Oh
was you
no.
actually wanted the food.
Yeah, and just to be able to eat to my hunger, because that was, I think I was just felt hungry all the time, and to
Yeah.
actually just be able to be, I'm still hungry. I'm going to have some. I didn't have extreme hunger, but I had very high levels of hunger,
Yeah.
like much higher than I'd, previously had. I probably had extreme hunger after the anorexia, but that sort of
Yes.
got messy with the bulimia as well.
Yes.
Um, but this was kind of just, I think, very high levels of hunger. So I'd be like, I'd eat a bowl of cereal and I'd be like, I want another one. So I'd just have another one. And I'd be like, I'm still hungry. Maybe I'll just have another. And then, but I'd maybe just have a smaller one. And then it'd be like, actually, you know what? I've had enough now. And then that just was like a
Mm.
really novel feeling as well. It was like, I don't need to go on and binge
Yeah.
because I've had enough. And I kept saying to myself that I was just allowed to eat however much I wanted. I kind of had to keep repeating that to myself
Yes.
so that I didn't panic. Like I'd be sort of standing there thinking I could panic and just binge and
Yes.
then go and be sick because that's kind of the normal thing to kind of do that. But I was
Yeah.
like, just try to stay calm, just have what I needed. And then I was like, oh, and now I'm able to stop. And like that was really novel. And it just,
That
yeah,
permission, isn't it? Is that
yeah,
your
it was
nervous
awesome.
system felt safer that this wasn't going to be taken away tomorrow or tonight, or
Yes,
it's like you can literally have 1,000 boxes of cereal if you want. How
yes,
many do you want?
yes,
Other
yeah.
than tonight, you've got to get as much in as possible because tomorrow we're not having any.
Exactly. It's just that, and that's it. That's the mindset. Because otherwise, it's just like your body and your mind just takes over. Because it's like, well, I'm
Yeah.
never getting this again, so I'm just going to eat as much as I can now.
Yeah, and the shame
But yeah,
spiral. Did you ever at any point during recovery feel that old urge to purge? And if so, how
yes,
did you sit with that and not act on it? Because in my opinion, the binges are easier to stop because you just allow all foods all the time whenever you want.
yes.
But then the feeling after to purge, like I had with the laxatives and the overexercise, that was harder for me to stop than simply allowing more food. So I'm curious what your experience was around letting go of that.
Yeah, and I think actually it's one of the things that I find that people don't speak about very much, and it was
Yeah.
really difficult to find when I was like looking in podcasts and things like
Mm.
how do you stop purging? Like how do you do this?
Yeah.
Um, and for me, well, I had a couple of things because one of the things, because I'd done it so often, I kind of automatically like would bring food back up when I was
Mm.
uncomfortable, and that almost happened just, yeah, sometimes after certain foods, sometimes if I was just too full. So that was actually really difficult because it was like, well, I can't really help it.
That's really
Yeah,
common. You'll be probably not surprised
yeah,
or maybe surprised how common
I
that
know.
is actually.
Yeah, I've heard people say, but yeah, I didn't know how common it was actually. It's
Mm.
just you feel like it's only you that this
Yeah.
happens to. But I actually randomly came across a podcast where somebody was talking about that and said, actually directed to a website in a paper where people were talking. They actually have a breathing technique because what happens is that I think your sphincter muscle at the top of your stomach kind of
Yeah.
it goes the wrong way. So it's sort of like it feels and sometimes it can happen to people even if they've just been sick for other reasons or
Mm.
whatever. And it's to do with your stomach sort of feeling fuller and releasing when it shouldn't. So there's actually just a really simple breathing technique you can do to stop it. So
Do you mind sharing that with us if you can remember what it
it's
was?
just so now you just breathe in and inflate your stomach and then breathe
Like
out through your mouth.
let it
Yeah, like
stick
you're
out.
inflating a balloon and then like blow out like you were blowing into a balloon.
Mm.
I think I'm not sure if that's the actual.
Yeah.
thing now because came across it last year and I was doing it so I would do it before I had something to eat, sometimes in the middle of having something to eat. And it's like it's just retraining everything. So now that
Mm,
it doesn't happen, or very rarely will I get that just happening.
that's awesome.
Um,
So you were working on yourself by doing the breathing technique. So you were helping yourself by doing those
so that helped a
exercises.
lot.
What
Yeah.
about the mental and the emotional discomfort?
Yeah, so that initially I did, and this might not work for people who have a big exercise thing, but if
Mm,
I was really uncomfortable after a meal, I'd go for a walk.
yeah.
So it just allowed me. So I actually ended up probably walking a lot more just in that first 3 or 4 weeks that I was really
Mm,
making an effort and doing this breathing as I was going as well.
yeah.
And it just gave enough time for the fullness to come down and it come
Yeah.
back. And then because it was quite a short time for it all to, and things that I sort of thought that I couldn't digest. I was like that these things are just really difficult for me to digest. They just sit in my stomach. And then I did find those things much harder to begin with. I was like, I feel so full after
Mm,
just say one bowl of muesli or something because it just seemed to sit there.
yeah.
And after maybe I think it wasn't very long. It was 3 or 4 weeks that went like my digestion really improved,
Mm.
and then I wasn't needing to like go out for walks after meals and things. It just was much easier.
God is
There's
amazing, isn't it, really? When you give
yeah,
it the chance and the space to just act normally, when it feels safe to act normally, it adapts so quickly.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And creamy things I find much more difficult. So occasionally there've been like ice cream I find really difficult.
Mm.
So a couple of times I've had ice cream in recovery. One of the times I purged, the other times I've managed to sit with it and just be almost that as well, knowing that I'm going to be really proud of myself the next day if I manage it. And there is just that I know now as well that what I'm feeling is probably less to do with my stomach and it's more to do with me panicking. There's a
Yeah,
behind the
it's
feeling.
always the
I have
emotional
to get rid
side.
of it. I have to get rid of it. And it's like, no, you don't. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what I'm hearing you say is you were reassuring yourself, like through your self-talk, because when I talk to people about, I had this, like that overwhelming panic of feeling full,
Yes.
it's
Yeah. I had
actually
that.
20% physical discomfort and like 80% emotional, like
Yes.
panic.
Yeah.
So you use self-talk to soothe yourself and reassure yourself through the panic that was trying to come through.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then quickly it started to shift for you. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Just I think some of it's, there's a reassurance about everything, how much you're eating, about,
Which you checked
um,
in quite,
things.
not a lot, but you weren't actually that active. But a few of the messages you did send, I remember responding to, it was asking for permission, really, and just reassurance of like, it's really okay. You keep needing to follow your mental and emotional hunger. It's okay.
Yeah.
And you just followed that and you
Yes.
took action with someone you trust like me, and then here you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's that consistency and trust
Mm.
that you'll get there.
Yeah.
And again, people like you give you hope, and other people in the group who'd recovered, or were on their
Mm.
way. That really helped as well.
Yeah, because I remember you, for people who are wondering like about the group and how it works, I remember you were there for a few live calls, but you weren't being coached all the time.
No, no, partly because I don't like being on screen.
And here you are.
I am. Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
did you take a lot of value from watching the recordings back and that type of thing?
Yes, I did. And I still do. And actually, I think so. Yeah, I would, if I had something specific myself that I really was kind of wanting coached or felt I needed help with,
Mm.
then I was like, right, I'm going to join a call. I'll do it. And then, yeah, the rest of it has really been useful hearing
Mm.
other people being coached and
Yeah.
yeah, I still find that
I do too. Like
quite good too.
I have a coach and I listened and watched her in within her group, her coach people, because we can always learn things, because even if the person's being coached on something like not the specific question that we had, there's always something we recognize within the person and like,
Yes.
oh, that
Yeah.
makes sense for me in this area. And
Yeah.
Yeah, so you showed up, you did the work, you listened to the calls, you asked for help when you really needed it.
Hmm.
How did you find the inner child stuff? Was any of that like a shock to you, a surprise to you? Had you done any of that deeper work before?
So it kind of reaffirmed some of what I'd already looked at and what issues I have because I've been depressed and had eating disorders for a long time. I've done quite a lot of therapy that and counselling that's not really eating disorder related, but kind of going through other things. So I feel
Yeah.
like I'd already done some of the work before, which meant I was probably the other reason that the food stuff came quite quick. It was quite easy.
Yes.
I wasn't, I couldn't have said it at the time really, but looking back now, a lot of the binges are, I think pretty much all my binges in the sort of just before I recovered were pretty much because I was hungry.
Yeah.
And not very many of them were to do with emotional reasons, whereas at a different point in my life, it was emotions as well, whereas I think I kind of done enough that I wasn't really
Yeah.
binging for that reason so much.
Yes.
Maybe the purging still a bit. Um,
Yeah. The release and the being
mhm.
able to sit with discomfort.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
But the inner,
how, go on.
I was just going to say the inner child stuff is still validating as to what the issues were,
Mm.
and yeah, I know that this is part of the reason that this is all here, and also, it's all a work in progress. I've recovered from my eating disorder, but there's still issues that I
Oh
probably still
yeah,
need
I
to
mean,
work through.
I don't think if I meet someone who says, "Oh, I'm completely there," whatever that means, I would be suspicious because I'm like you. I've fully recovered from my eating disorder, but in motherhood now, I'm uncovering stuff that I wouldn't have uncovered if I hadn't been
No,
a mother. I'm like, "Oh,
no.
that's still something that's linked to the past. Let me look at that." And so life happens, triggers happen, and then you get to dive deeper into the stuff
Mm,
that's underneath,
yeah.
I think. And so, did you gain weight during this recovery in the group, or
Yes.
what happened with your body size and how did you navigate that?
So body size is still something I struggle with a little bit. I think I've still got a bit of body dysmorphia.
Mm.
Um, because I find it difficult to know exactly what my size is.
Yeah.
But yes, so initially I put on weight and I put on a lot of weight around my middle mainly initially, and but that it kind of settled after about 4 or 5 months, something like that.
Yeah.
And then I would say more recently it's gone down a little bit again, maybe
Yeah.
just because I can fit some things a bit easier. I find it really difficult. Yeah, putting on weight, not fitting things. Yeah, I'm wondering how people are looking at you and are they noticing, which they might
How
not
did
be.
how did you navigate that? I mean, obviously you had the group and things, but what came through from maybe watching calls or asking me, like for people that are worried about weight gain, because 95% of people are worried about weight gain in recovery. What's your 2 cents, if you like, on how you navigated it? Because, of course, you felt uncomfortable. You didn't have the magic answer to just not feel uncomfortable with it.
No,
You do.
no. I guess part of it was just this is what I'm doing, and if I gain weight, then that's what I'm doing, and it doesn't. I mean, my sister was very supportive. She said, we don't care what
Mm.
you weigh. It's just you that we love, and that sort of thing helped. Um, Thinking about how I think of other people, I
Mm.
don't care what weight they are, and I don't like them more or less if they gain weight or lose weight or
Yeah.
anything. It doesn't. So thinking about how I felt about my friends and other people, I'm like, well, if they put on weight, I'd just be, I wouldn't care. And in
Mm.
fact, if they want to eat more, then good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just that sort of reframing it from what it actually means. And I think this because it's difficult, isn't it? Because that's kind of what you spend your whole life fearing, and then it happens, and you've got
Yeah.
to deal with it somehow.
Yep. I
And it's
remember
the
for
whole
me,
point of
it's
your eating disorder. So it gets really, really loud, and it's like
It
shouting
does. And
at you
then
the
what
whole time.
was it the same for you? Like when it happened, so when it happened for me, oh, I've just kicked my screen. Um, it was the worst thing that happened to me, but then very quickly it wasn't. So like this fear
Yeah,
I'd had my entire life, like fear of weight gain, fear of weight gain, fear of weight gain. When it first happened, I was like, oh my God, this is worse than I ever thought it was. Like, no wonder I was trying to avoid this for my entire life. And then like you, when I was like, but I can't restrict anyway, so I'm just like,
yeah,
the finish line is like just freedom and acceptance somehow. I kept going quite quickly because I didn't allow myself to like go back to try to get smaller. It actually wasn't bad at all. So how did you experience like the weight gain that you have in recovery?
yeah. I think very similar. That yeah, it sort of was really hard to begin with, and then it sort of got a bit easier. And I think also, I do think there's part of you that sees it as much bigger than
Yeah,
it is, or that notices it much more than anybody around you does. And then
yes.
when it starts to settle, it feels like, oh, maybe that wasn't as bad. Um,
Yeah. And I
so
remember looking in the mirror, I don't know if you relate, and think like obviously I gained weight, so I was bigger, but the monster in my head was telling me stories like not literally, but my emotions would back this story up. Like if you gain weight, your entire shape's gonna change. You're gonna be this big blobby thing. Whereas actually I was just the same shape, just bigger. So it wasn't
yeah,
like everything went disproportionate to what I was used to when I looked in the mirror. I was the same, just bigger.
yes, yeah, yeah, and it also it made me think actually as well that how much your thoughts in your head. So this was another thing for me that actually made quite a big difference because at one point I realized I was feeling really, I'd been feeling okay, and then I'd looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, I just started feeling really upset because I looked so big or whatever it was, and thinking, I can't cope with this. And then there was something in my head, I was just thinking, but this is my thoughts that are making me unhappy. Like I can, back to that, almost like I can choose not to think those thoughts. And it's nobody else who's telling me I look horrible or that my life's terrible because I've gained weight or anything, or that I look
Mm,
awful. It's my thought, and I was really clear in my head that actually there's so many things that happen in life that you can't help, that do make you sad, that make you unhappy, and you can't do anything about them. But to let your own thoughts do it to you, it just seems like that. Yeah. So I think I really made an effort from then to try and put those thoughts out of my head when I realized I was having them as well, just to kind of like, no, they're unhelpful thoughts. I'm not engaging in them.
that's
And
so powerful because I bang on about this all the time. Like, we are not our thoughts, we are the thinker of our thoughts.
yes,
And
yeah,
yes, thoughts come automatically. We can't control our thoughts, else we would never have a negative thought that made us feel bad. But we do get to decide where what we focus on. So if we're
yes.
ruminating on the thought, oh my God, I look so big, I look horrible, I've got, that's just going to multiply. But if, like you recognize that, wait, this thought is not serving me, it's actually making me feel shit.
And I can choose not to think it. It's like so
Yeah,
freeing. It's just like,
so
go away.
freeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, what helped me as well, obviously, because I'm thinking of the listeners listening, and it's going back to my recovery. When I would look in the mirror and just be like, oh my God, like I want to crawl out of my own skin because I just feel so disgusting. I would then practice just being and not abandoning myself. So that would just mean
Yeah.
being with the disgusting feelings and looking in the mirror without running away or saying I'll diet or trying to fix it somehow. I
Mm-hmm.
just stayed with the feeling of disgust. And then I would go to like, well, if nothing means anything, like we just create meaning because we've been taught to and conditioned to, then the fact is, I have gained weight, full stop. That's a fact. It's only because my thoughts are saying, and this means you're ugly, undesirable, disgusting, unlovable. But actually, what if I were to think something different and focus on that, even if it was more neutral, like I've gained weight and I've gained food freedom?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the more you go down that road, the more thoughts come in that area and the better you feel. And then it spirals in a
Yes.
positive way, right?
Yes. Yeah. It starts to get easier. And there was a book you recommended to me that helped with that as well. The Untethered Soul.
Oh, yeah, by Michael Singer.
Yeah, yeah. And that was, I think that was one of the things that had started me. And obviously you talk about it a lot as well, but just that kind of like, actually, yeah, these thoughts are just not helping. They're part of what's making me unhappy, and I can choose not to, like you say, you can't choose them not to come up at all, but you can
Yeah,
choose not to dwell on them and then make stories in them. Um, and then feel horrible
absolutely.
because of them. It's like there's so many other things in life that make you feel horrible. Just leave your thoughts out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time, I think it would have been one of my coaches that asked me this, or maybe asked a group coaching person this, and I listened back. And she said, if you wasn't thinking, you would have heard me say this before, if you weren't thinking about food in your body, what would you be thinking about right now? And I
Mm.
remember so when I was in my head, spiraling, I would feel the disgust. I would ask about my meaning, what meaning I'm making it, choose a different thought, and then I'll be like, what would I actually? And then I didn't really have an answer. Like most of the time, it was like, I have no idea what I'd be thinking about. But actually, just asking that question created space for something else other than my body and food to be thought about and focused on. That helped as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, how's your relationship with food now, would you say?
Oh,
How would
so
you
much
describe
better. I
that?
mean, I think I was thinking the other day as well, like a lot of recovery for me has been a lot of it's in the small things rather than the
Mm,
big things. So I've not like made any big changes or anything like that, but just everything. I've got so many foods in the house now that I'd have not had in before because
mm,
they would all trigger me to binge, and they don't anymore. Some of them I forget about. Um, I've started, like, I used to avoid making meals, or I only made certain meals that I knew were an okay quantity and I could
mm,
not overeat on them. And
mm.
then, so there were certain things that I just wouldn't cook or bake or whatever. So now I've been able to experiment a bit more with making things, and that's just a bit more interesting. Um, I've got more space in my head for stuff. It's just, and I feel if I go out for a meal, I'm not having to worry about, oh, maybe I'm going to overeat, maybe
Mm.
I'm going to have to purge. Where am I going to do that? I don't need to be thinking about any of that. It's just, yeah, I'm not having to second
Mm.
guess myself all the time and try and plan for
Freedom.
eventualities. I can just eat and not think about it. And if I'm hungry, I just have something to eat, and I'm not thinking, oh, but I already had that earlier, or I'm going to have this later. It's just, well, I'm hungry, I'm just going to have it.
Yeah, that's amazing. What about your connection with your body? Because I assume you've developed a much better relationship with yourself and with your physical body. So how has that changed?
Um, I think I think that's still a work in progress as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm certainly, like, I used, again, back to thoughts and the things you say to yourself. You know, I used to hate hate my body, hate myself, and just be constantly telling myself how fat I was and how awful I
Mm.
looked, and always thinking about how I looked when I was sitting or out or whatever I was doing. Whereas now I'm just a bit more freer to just let my body be how it is. And I think I also have more, and this has probably only come recently, really, but it just that sort of feeling my body's here to help me live life, and I'm just living in it. It's not, and it's a gift, and it's not something to hate or try and manipulate. It's just here to help. And I think a lot of that's listening to people like you as well. You gradually get the message. It starts to filter through at some point.
Oh, you need to listen like on repetition.
Yeah,
Repetition is a mother of all learning, so you need to hear the same thing like 100 times in different ways from different people. And then one
yeah,
time, like it, for me with the whole meaning thing, I mean, not a lot of people talk about this actually, but when I truly grasp that nothing means anything, only the story we decide to focus on, that to me was freedom because I know and knew at any point that I feel a feeling I don't want to feel. I mean, obviously, if someone dies and like life happens, that's different. But if I'm creating thoughts and feelings that I don't want to think and feel, then I have the freedom to change that by simply being aware of what story I'm telling myself and then just
yeah,
choosing to think a different story. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not because you only believe the old story because you've told it yourself or, the consensus of society have told it and conditioned you, but it's just a story. So
yeah,
what would create freedom and just focus on that? And it kind of it's quite simple, really. It's not easy, but it's simple if
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
how it feels to do that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so is there anything that I've not asked you that you want to share? So if you imagine if you were speaking to the old version of you when you first found me, or even before then, is there anything that you would need to hear that we've not perhaps spoke about?
Um, I think just to keep going. That is
Mm.
difficult to start off with, and I see this with everybody in the group as well. Is that you decide you want to recover, then the eating disorder gets really, really loud, and you put
Mhm.
on weight, and it all gets really, really hard. And but as time goes on, that all gets easier. It all gets better, and it's so much better on the other side. And it doesn't even have to be anything. I say it's not like anything big and major. It's just like all the little things in my life that are better because of changing this. And I'm so glad I kept going. And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I think maybe people get stuck at that middle stage, and just because it is difficult and it feels difficult, but it's just really worth it.
Yeah.
And it does all get better.
I love you brought that up because a lot of people do get so far and they restrict less,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not actually truly free and they're scared
No,
to push past that extra barrier that is leading to total freedom, but that might mean more weight gain and letting go of control. And like you're saying, as I'm saying, as other people out there are saying, you've never met a single person who's recovered who regrets recovery.
no, no. And this is it. And it seems to, because the other thing I sort of noticed with, like people like you or um, others that I follow that have recovered, they often sort of, you see that they've recovered after that year or whatever. But then even in the sort of 2 or 3 years after that, they sort of it solidifies. They kind of
Mm,
and they get even more confident in their body, and they get even
yeah,
happier with it. And I've even found that just in the sort of last few months, that without even necessarily doing anything specific, it's just that you're going further. And one of the things I felt for a while as well was that recovery, when you first recover, it's a bit like when you've learned to drive, and then you take off your L plates, but you put the P plates on because you're
yeah.
just not quite confident yet. So it's that sort of like you go through that phase of, well, I don't have an eating disorder anymore, but I'm not very confident. But then as you like navigate all the other situations that are after
Mm,
that, you get more and more confident, and you have more experiences, and you enjoy
yeah.
the freedom, and it just is.
I love that. It's true. I remember being recovered and then like being at a buffet and then kind of being like, I don't restrict anymore. So kind of like I can just kind of have what I want. And it wasn't like I needed to give myself permission in recovery because I had permission. I didn't feel
Yeah,
any anxiety, but it was a bit like, how do I do this thing now? How do I
yeah,
do
yeah,
life
yeah. How do
without
I
having
navigate
rules?
this? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and you just get the more you do it, the more confident you feel. And obviously, with me having had a baby not that long ago, my body has changed, but I'm so glad that I did all the work I have done. And people, like you said, Karen, people don't see the changes that you necessarily see. Like
No.
people look at me and think, I just look the same
Mm-hmm.
because I believe I was at my set point weight like way before I was pregnant. So my body just got pregnant, had the baby, and then just kind of settled back to where it was. But things have changed because I know my body well, but no one even notices, no one even cares, and I don't either because how cool that I've like had a baby and my body's been
It's
able to do
amazing,
that.
isn't it? When you realize how amazing your body is as well. Yeah.
Yeah, gratitude and
Mm.
gratitude, freedom, and like let's finish with what you said about you understand now that your body's with you for life and these aren't yours, but my was like it's just a vessel to experience life in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it has to be. Let's stop putting it on a pedestal and comparing and just I know it's practice in the world we live in, but just practice living in the bodies we have because this is the body we have. Like we can't change it unless we want to live with an eating disorder for the rest of our lives. No, thank you.
No.
So we may as well just enjoy it and appreciate it and then actually not even focus on the body.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Karen, for sharing your story. How do you feel about having shared it? 'Cause I know you were a bit like, oh God, like to share. Like I'm
Yeah.
curious if you don't mind sharing. Does it still feel like weird, or does it feel liberating somehow?
It feels like a relief, yes.
Mm,
Yeah, and it was easier than I thought, I think.
good.
Just so thank you.
Yeah,
Maybe
you're
ask the right
welcome.
questions. So
You're
yeah.
welcome. And if anyone, you don't have to say yes, but if anyone does want to like ask you a question,
Hmm.
if they really relate to something you've shared, is there did you want them to like reach out to me to then ask you? So
Yeah,
how
that's
do you
probably
want?
easiest. Yeah,
Yeah,
rather than giving an email. Yeah.
I think so. So if someone wants to ask Karen a question, email me, victoria@victoriakleinsman.com, and then I'll make sure Karen gets it. Then Karen can choose if she wants to reply to
Yeah.
the person directly or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, probably be happy to reply directly, but yeah,
Yeah.
just I'm not giving out my email on here.
No, of course, that's a big platform for loads of random people to have your
Yeah.
email. I totally get that. And it's just, I know, another story that thank you for sharing your story because I'm here sharing my story, but someone will really relate to what you've shared. And then it will give them hope and inspiration that, hey, I can also do it too. So I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story and also for sharing about the group because, a lot of people hear transformations in one-to-one coaching, but that's why I asked you to come and share. Like, it's also so possible to not have to have thousands to invest in yourself in
Mm,
one-to-one
yeah.
and actually join a group at a lower cost and still completely transform and heal.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you can do it all your own as well, but I
Yeah.
mean, you did, or almost.
Almost.
But
I had a few coaches, but
you
not.
have
I wish
some
I had a
people.
coach like me, to be fair.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, this is it. You can do it on your own, but it's not easy. I think this is the difficult thing, and to get you through those difficult bits, that's where you need a coach or other people. And
Yeah.
I've definitely found the group really helpful. You've been really helpful, and other people's stories have helped me as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I did want to come on and
Yeah.
share
Well,
mine
thank
too.
you. And now yours is out here helping people. So thank you. And thank you
Thank
to our
you.
listeners. If you have any questions, as I say for Karen, let me know. And I'll see you next time. Much love.